270, Alex joins the fight. As the call ended, Alex had no doubt that if he didn't get there in time, Don would be killed. He ran outside and took a taxi and went straight to Don's home. Fortunately, Don had already told him where he lived. "Please, drive more quickly," he asked. They seemed to be going very slowly. The driver replied, "If you think you can drive better than me, please be my guest. I can't wait to see how well a security guard can drive through Baltimore." His family had been taxi drivers in Baltimore for several generations. He was very relaxed about his job. But Alex knew that Don's life was in his hands. He was frantic. "Stop the car," he told the driver. "Why? Do you want to get out here? The minimum fare is $5. Do you want to pay by cash or card?" asked the driver. Alex got out of the car, went round to the driver's side, opened the door, and pulled the driver out. The driver thought that Alex was attempting to steal the cab, and he looked at him with terror. "Get in the car," Alex yelled at him as he climbed into the driver's seat and fastened his seatbelt. Cowed, the driver climbed into the passenger seat. With a roar of the engine, the taxi flew out onto the highway. It took them only 15 minutes to get to Don's home. They would have been even quicker if they hadn't been stopped by several sets of traffic lights on the road. As soon as the driver got out of his car, he vomited on the ground. He had been driving for 20 years, but he had never gone so fast through the city. He had spent the whole journey terrified that Alex was going to crash. Fortunately, they had reached their destination without hitting any other vehicles. Alex gave him $100 and turned his back to him. The basement where Don lived was easy to find, and he quickly arrived at his door. He tried to open the door, but it was locked. He took a deep breath and knocked hard 3 times. Then there was the sound of the bolt being pulled back. Then a deep male voice said, "Come in." Alex opened the door and went in. He saw Don lying on the ground with his hands clasped in front of him. His face was covered with blood, and it was clear that he was in pain. An innocent-looking girl kneeled beside him. "Don!" Alex exclaimed. His entire focus was on his friend, and he completely forgot that there was another person in the room. "Alex," said a deep voice, and Alex quickly stood. He turned around and saw a huge man standing behind the door. He was aiming a powerful fist straight at his face. Saul planned to knock Alex unconscious with one punch, and then quickly deal with the 2 security guards together. Then he could have a good time with the sister. He intended to leave the bodies of the 2 guards somewhere where wild animals would eat their corpses. No one would know what happened to the 2 missing security guards. He had everything worked out in his mind, but first he had to carry out his plan. Already things were not going as he had imagined. His first punch didn't knock Alex unconscious. In fact, it missed him altogether. Using his martial arts training, Alex managed to duck away from his opponent's fist and grab hold of his hands. Using Saul's own strength against him, combined with his own, he was able to throw the big man backward. Saul hit the wall with a loud thud, and the entire apartment seemed to shake with the impact. "Who are you?" Saul asked, panicking slightly. He realized that beating this young man was not going to be as simple as he'd assumed. "Who am I? That's not what you should be worrying about right now," Alex replied. This man had beaten Don badly. He was not going to let him off lightly. "I'm going to kill you," Saul told him. Although Saul realized that Alex was not as weak as he had thought, he still felt that he could easily beat him. Saul aimed another punch to his opponent's head. He was determined to knock him unconscious. Alex raised his hands and met Saul's fist with his two hands clasped together. When he heard the sound of bone breaking, he checked his hands but found that they were intact. Saul's hand was broken from the middle finger to the thumb. "Ah!" he screamed out in pain and frustration. It was not going at all as he'd imagined. The young man he was fighting was way stronger than any opponent that he had faced in the underground fighting ring. Saul looked at Alex in horror and asked, "Who are you? Where did you learn to fight like that?" "I told you, you shouldn't waste your time worrying about that," Alex said as he looked at Saul coldly. Slowly, he walked over to him. Saul looked defeated and scared for his life. But suddenly he raised his hand, and in it was a small pistol aimed directly at Alex's head. Saul rarely used his gun. He preferred physical combat, which he felt was more enjoyable. But he realized that on this occasion, he had no alternative. He felt that if he didn't use the gun, he wouldn't live to see the sunrise. Alex stopped and stared at the pistol in Saul's hand. Saul smiled, looking more relaxed. He said, "I admit that you're stronger than me and a skillful fighter. But do you really think that in modern society your martial arts skills are invincible? What a joke. Today you're going to die." Alex wasn't perturbed by Saul's words. He stepped forward again. "Do you want to die?" Saul roared. At the same time, he pulled the trigger. There was an ear-piercing bang as the gun fired into the room. Following the gunshot, Saul relaxed. He knew that Alex must be dead, and he could turn his attention to finishing off Don, and then having fun with his sister. Don and Daisy also assumed for a second that Alex must be dead. There was no way he could have dodged the bullet when it was fired at such close range. But they didn't know that when Saul pulled the trigger, Alex raised his hand. They hadn't noticed the flash of light on metal as the gun went off. There was a spray of sparks in the space between Alex and Saul, and then a soft poof sound. When everyone looked in awe at Alex, they saw a small copper bullet embedded in the wall behind his head. They watched as the bullet slipped slowly from the wall and landed on the ground with a thump. Alex didn't turn around, but kept his eyes on the muzzle of Saul's gun the whole time. As soon as he had seen that his opponent had a gun, he had pulled out his blade, which had hit the bullet and changed its trajectory. "What?" Saul was stunned. "What did he just do? How can someone change the direction of a bullet?" In Saul's eyes, Alex had become a terrifying opponent. If he couldn't kill him in the next seconds, then he might be the one to die instead. Die! Saul yelled and fired 7 shots at Alex in a row. But Alex managed to deflect each bullet with his blade. Not a single shot hit him. In a panic, Saul tried to pull the trigger again, but nothing happened. The gun was empty. He was out of ammunition. Alex punched Saul hard in the face. Saul hit the wall and fell to the ground. Alex had only put half his power behind the punch. If he had used all his strength, he would have broken Saul's neck. Without giving Saul a chance to breathe, he raised his foot and kicked him in the ribs. "Ah!" Saul cried as he slid across the ground and hit the far wall. Most of Saul's ribs were broken, but not all. Saul was aware that Alex could have shattered all of his ribs if he wanted to. "Get up," Alex said, as he bent down and grabbed Saul's waist with both hands. He lifted Saul over his head and threw him back down on the ground. There was a loud thud as his back hit the ground. "Ah!" Saul groaned as he writhed on the ground. His face was scrunched up from the intense pain coursing through his entire body. At that moment, he would have gladly died to stop the pain he was feeling. Alex went over to Don and helped him up. Thank you, Daisy said to Alex, who is their savior in her eyes. "You must take Don straight to the hospital to get his injuries treated. Don't worry about the money, I'll cover it. I'll meet you there later," Alex told her. "Okay," Daisy nodded. She understood this was no time to argue. "Alex, you should come with us," Don said. He was full of awe and respect for Alex. But he was also thinking ahead. He knew that soon, Saul's accomplices would arrive looking for him. Although Alex was powerful, even he couldn't stand up to a whole gang of thugs. Alex shook his head and said, "I have a few things to take care of first. You go to the hospital with Daisy now, and I'll meet you there soon." "Don't worry, Alex. I'll get my brother to the hospital. Please be careful," Daisy said, then walked out of the door with Don. Saul, who was rolling around on the ground, was starting to recover a little. When he saw that Alex was staring at him, he shivered all over and shuffled backward. Looking at Alex, he felt like he was looking into the eyes of the devil himself. "Now, take me to meet the 2 rich guys who ordered you to come here," Alex demanded. Alex knew without asking that Saul must have been sent by the 2 rich guys in the BMW that he had offended at the university. They had clearly wanted to kill him and Don, and Alex wasn't about to let them off. "Yes, okay." Saul didn't dare to resist, so he quickly agreed to Alex's demand. He told him, "I don't know where they are now. I need to make a call to find out." "Okay, I don't need to remind you who's in charge here," Alex said. He felt confident that Saul was too scared to play any tricks. Saul tried to calm down so that Chris wouldn't be able to tell that there was anything wrong with him. He took out his cell phone and dialed Chris's number. He panicked a little when his call wasn't answered immediately. At that time, Chris and Julian were in Julian's private villa. They were in a huge bedroom containing a large double bed situated right in the middle of the room. Around the walls were a desk, chair, and other furniture. The door of the room was open, leading to a large ensuite. This was the room where Julian brought guests, particularly beautiful women. Over the last year, he had slept with over 30 women in that bed. That particular day, Julian had summoned 2 very pretty young ladies to entertain himself and his cousin. At that moment, Julian was busy with one of the girls by the desk, while Chris had taken the other girl into the bathroom. Julian's body was covered with sweat, and the room echoed with the sounds of their kissing. He was in the throes of ecstasy. At a pivotal moment, he was interrupted by the ringtone of his cousin's cell phone. When he heard the phone ringing, Julian looked in the direction of the bathroom and thought, "Chris is having too good a time. I won't disturb him." He grabbed Chris's cell phone and was about to cut off the call when he saw that the caller was Saul. Expecting good news, he smiled and answered the call. "Saul, have you dealt with those 2 security guards? Is it done?"